All right, so we've gone live now. Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you so much for joining us today to do the reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, third canto, seventh canto, third chapter, verse number 17.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this is seventh canto, third chapter, Hiranyakashipu's plan to become immortal. And we're taking off on text 17. Brahma is speaking. I just read the first verse. In Sanskrit, Shri Brahma Vacha. Utitoshtishtaba drante tapasido sikashipa varadohang anuprapto vriyata mipsito varaha. Lord Brahma said, O son of Kashyapa Muni, please get up, please get up. All good fortune unto you. You are now perfect in the performance of your austerities, and therefore I may give you a benediction. You may now ask from me whatever you desire, and I shall try to fulfill your wish. Purport. Srila Madhvacharya quotes from the Skanda Purana, which says that Hiranyakashipu, having become a devotee of Lord Brahma, who is known as Hiranyagarbha, and having undergone a severe austerity to please him, is also known as Hiranyaka. Rakshasas and demons worship various demigods, such as Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, just to take the post of these demigods. This we have already explained in previous verses, 18. I've been very much astonished to see your endurance, in spite of being eaten and bitten by all kinds of worms and ants. You are keeping your life air circulating within your bones. Certainly this is wonderful. Purport. It appears that the soul can exist even through the bones, as shown by the personal example of Hiranyakashipu. When great yogis are in samadhi, even when their bodies are buried and their skin, marrow, blood, and so on have all been eaten, if only their bones remain, they can exist in a transcendental position. Very recently, an archaeologist published findings indicating that Lord Christ, after being buried, was exhumed and that he then went to Kashmir. There have been many actual examples of yogis being buried in trance and exhumed alive and in good condition several hours later. Don't try this at home. A yogi can keep himself alive in a transcendental state, even if buried not only for many days, but for many years. Text 19. Even saintly persons like Brigu, born previously, could not perform such severe austerities, nor will anyone in the future be able to do so. Who within these three worlds can sustain his life without even drinking water for 100 celestial years? Purport. It appears that even if a yogi does not drink a drop of water, he can live for many, many years by the yogic process, though his outer body be eaten by ants and moths. 20. My dear son Aditi, with a great determination and austerity, you have done what was impossible even for great saintly persons. And thus I have certainly been conquered by you. Report. In regard to the word jitaha, Srila Madhava Muni gives the following quotation from the Shabda Nirnaya. Parabhutam Vashastang Cha Jita Abhit Uchyate Budai. If one comes under someone else's control or is defeated by another, he is called Jita. Hiranyakashipu's austerity was so great and wonderful that even Lord Brahma agreed to be conquered by him. 21. O best of the Asuras, for this reason I am now prepared to give you all benedictions according to your desire. I belong to the celestial world of demigods who do not die like human beings. Therefore, although you are subject to death, your audience with me will not go in vain. Purport. It appears that human beings and Asuras are subject to death, whereas demigods are not. The demigods who reside with Lord Brahma in Satyaloka go to Vaikuntha-loka in their present bodily constructions at the time of the dissolution. Therefore, although Hiranyakasipu had undergone severe austerities, Lord Brahma predicted that he had to die. He could not become immortal or even gain equal status to the demigods. The great austerities and penances he had performed for so many years could not give him protection from death. This was foretold by Lord Brahma. 22. Shri Narad Muni continued, after speaking these words to Hiranyakasipu, Lord Brahma, the original being of this universe, who is extremely powerful, sprinkled transcendental infallible spiritual water from his kamandalu upon Hiranyakashipu's body, which had been eaten away by ants and moths. Thus he enlivened Hiranyakasipu. Report, Lord Brahma is the first created being within this universe and is empowered by the Supreme Lord to create. Tene Brahma Hridaya Adikavaye. The Adideva or Adikavi, the first living creature, was personally taught by the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the heart. There is no one to teach him, but since the Lord is situated within Brahma's heart, Brahma was educated by the Lord himself. Lord Brahma, being especially empowered, is infallible in doing whatever he wants. This is the meaning of the word Amoga Radhasa. He desired to restore Hiranyakashipu's original body, and therefore by sprinkling transcendental water from his water pot, he immediately did so. 23. As soon as he was sprinkled with the water from Lord Brahma's water pot, Hiranyakashipu arose, endowed with a full body, with limbs so strong that he could bear the striking of a thunderbolt, with physical strength and a bodily luster resembling molten gold. He emerged from the anthill, a completely young man, just as fire springs from fuel wood. Report, Hiranyakashipu was revitalized so much so that his body was quite competent to tolerate the striking of thunderbolts. He was now a young man with a strong body and a very beautiful bodily luster resembling molten gold. This is the rejuvenation that took place because of his severe austerity and penance. 24. Seeing Lord Brahma present before him in the sky, carried by a swan airplane, Hiranyakasipu was extremely pleased. He immediately fell flat with his head on the ground and began to express his obligation to the Lord. Report, Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 9:23 and 24, Ye pyanya devata bhakta yajante shradayan vitaha te pimam eva kaunteya yajantya vidhi purvakam aham hi sarva yagyanam bhakta cha prabhureva cha natumam abhijananti tatre natasyavantite. Whatever a man may sacrifice to other gods, O son of Kunti, is really meant for me alone. But it is offered without true understanding. I am the only enjoyer and the only object of sacrifice. Those who do not recognize my true transcendental nature fall down. In effect, Krishna says, persons engaged in the worship of demigods are not very intelligent, although such worship is indirectly offered to me. For example, when a man pours water on the leaves and branches of a tree without pouring water on the root, he does so without sufficient knowledge or without observing regulative principles. The process of watering a tree is to pour water on the root. Similarly, the process of rendering service to different parts of the body is to apply food to the stomach. The demigods are, so to speak, different officers and directors in the government of the Supreme Lord. One has to follow the laws made by the government, not by the officers or directors. Similarly, everyone is to offer his worship to the Supreme Lord only. That will automatically satisfy the different officers and directors of the Lord. The officers and directors are engaged as representatives of the government, and to offer some bribe to the officers and directors is illegal. This is stated in Bhagavad Gita as avidhi purvakam. In other words, Krishna does not approve the unnecessary worship of the demigods. In Bhagavad Gita, it is clearly stated that there are many types of yajna performances recommended in the Vedic literatures, but actually all of them are meant for satisfying the Supreme Lord. Jagna means Vishnu. In the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, it is clearly stated that one should work only for satisfying Yajna or Vishnu. The perfectional form of human civilization, known as Varnashram Dharma, is specifically meant for satisfying Vishnu. Therefore, Krishna says, I am the enjoyer of all sacrifices. because I am the Supreme Master. However, less intelligent persons, without knowing this fact, worship demigods for temporary benefit. Therefore, they fall down to material existence and do not achieve the desired goal of life. If, however, anyone has any material desire to be fulfilled, he had better pray for it to the Supreme Lord, although that is not pure devotion, and he will thus achieve the desired result. Although Hiranyakasipu offered his obeisances unto Lord Brahma, he was strongly inimical toward Lord Vishnu. This is the symptom of an asura. Asuras worship the demigods as being separate from the Lord, not knowing that all the demigods are powerful because of being servants of the Lord. If the Supreme Lord were to withdraw the powers of the demigods would no longer be able to offer benedictions to their worshippers. The difference between a devotee and a non-devotee, or asura, is that a devotee knows that Lord Vishnu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that everyone derives power from him. Without worshipping the demigods for particular powers, a devotee worships Lord Vishnu, knowing that if he desires a particular power, he can get that power while acting as Lord Vishnu's devotee. Therefore, in the Shastra, Bhagavatam 2.3.10, it is recommended, Akama sarva kamo va moksha kama udaradi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. A person who has broader intelligence, whether he be full of material desires, free from material desires, or desiring liberation, must by all means worship the Supreme Whole, the Personality Godhead. Even if a person has material desires, instead of worshiping the demigods, he should pray to the Supreme Lord, so that his connection with the Supreme Lord will be established, and he will be saved from becoming a demon or a non-devotee. In this regard, Srila Madhvacharya gives the following quotation from the Brahma Tarka. Ekastana ekakaryatvad Vishnu pradan yatastata jivasya tat adinatvan na binadi kritam vachaha. Since Vishnu is the Supreme, by worshipping Vishnu, one can fulfill all one's desires. There's no need to divert one's attention to any demigod. 25. Then getting up from the ground and seeing Lord Brahma before him, the head of the Daityas, was overwhelmed by jubilation. With tears in his eyes, his whole body shivering, he began praying in a humble mood, with folded hands and a faltering voice, to satisfy Lord Brahma. Let me offer my respectful obeisances on the Supreme Lord in this universe. At the end of each day of his life, the universe is fully covered with dense darkness by the influence of time. And then again, during his next day, that self-effulgent Lord, by his own effulgence, manifests, maintains, and destroys the entire cosmic manifestation through the material energy, which is invested with the three modes of material nature. He, Lord Brahma, is the shelter of those modes of nature, Sattvagun, Rajagun, and Tamagun. Report. The words Abhi Vyagana Jagat Idam refer to he who creates this cosmic manifestation. The original creator is the Supreme Personality Godhead, Krishna, Janmadi Asayataha. Lord Brahma is the secondary creator. When Lord Brahma is empowered by Lord Krishna as an engineer to create the phenomenal world, he becomes the supremely powerful feature within this universe. The total material energy is created by Krishna, and later taking advantage of all that has necessarily been created, Lord Brahma engineers the entire phenomenal universe. At the end of Lord Brahma's day, everything up to Svargaloka is inundated with water. And the next morning, when there is darkness in the universe, Brahma again brings the phenomenal manifestation into existence. Therefore, he is described here as he who manifests this universe. Trin Gunan Vrinoti. Lord Brahma takes advantage of the three modes of material nature. Prakriti, material nature, is described here as Tri Brita, the source of the three material modes. Srila Madhvacharya comments in this connection that Tri Brita means Prakritya. Thus, Lord Krishna is the original creator and Lord Brahma is the original engineer. 28. I offer my obeisances to the original personality in this universe, Lord Brahma, who is cognizant and who can apply his mind and realize intelligence in creating this cosmic manifestation. It is because of his activities that everything within the universe is visible. He is therefore the cause of all manifestations. Report. The Vedanta Sutra begins by declaring that the absolute person is the original source of all creation. Janmadi Yasya Taha. One may ask whether Lord Brahma is the supreme absolute person. No, the supreme absolute person is Krishna. Brahma receives his mind, intelligence, materials, and everything else from Krishna. And then he becomes the secondary creator, the engineer of this universe. In this regard, we may note that the creation does not take place accidentally because of the explosion of a chunk. Such nonsensical theories are not accepted by Vedic students. The first created living being is Brahma, who is endowed with perfect knowledge and intelligence by the Lord. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, Tene Brahma Hridayadikavaye. Although Brahma is the first created being, he's not independent, for he receives help from the Supreme Personality of Godhead through his heart. There's no one but Brahma at the time of creation, and therefore he receives his intelligence directly from the Lord through the heart. This has been discussed in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam. Lord Brahma is described in this verse as the original cause of the cosmic manifestation, and this applies to his position in the mature world. There are many, many such controllers, all of whom are created by the Supreme Lord Vishnu. This is illustrated by an incident described in Chaitanya Charitamrita. This is for Dayanidhi. When the Brahma of this particular universe was invited by Krishna to Dwarka, he thought that he was the only Brahma. Therefore, when Krishna inquired from his servant which Brahma was at the door to visit, Lord Brahma was surprised. He replied that, of course, Lord Brahma, the father of the four Kumaras, was waiting at the door. Later, Lord Brahma asked Krishna why he had inquired which Brahma had come. He was then informed that there are millions of other Brahmas because there are millions of universes. Krishna then called all the Brahmas who immediately came to visit him. The Chaturmukha Brahma, the four-headed Brahma of this universe, thought himself a very insignificant creature in the presence of so many Brahmas with so many heads. Thus, although there is a Brahma who is the engineer of each universe, Krishna is the original source of all of them. 29. Your Lordship, being the origin of the life of this mature world, is the master and controller of the living entities, both moving and stationary. And you inspire their consciousness. You maintain the mind and the acting and knowledge acquiring senses. And therefore you are the great controller of all the material elements and their qualities. And you are the controller of all desires. Purport. In this verse, it is clearly indicated that the original source of everything is life. Brahma was instructed by the supreme life, Krishna. Krishna is the supreme living entity, Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam. And Brahma is also a living entity. But the original source of Brahma is Krishna. Therefore, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 7:7, Matak Pratarannanyat Kinchidasti Dhananjaya. O Arjuna, there's no truth superior to me. Krishna is the original source of Brahma, who is the original source of this universe. Brahma is a representative of Krishna, and therefore all the qualities and activities of Krishna are also present in Lord Brahma. 30. My dear Lord, by your form as the Vedas personified and through knowledge relating to the activities of all the yogic Brahmins, you spread the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies of the 7 kinds of sacrifices, headed by Agnishtoma. Indeed, you inspired the yogic Brahmins to perform the rituals mentioned in the 3 Vedas. Being the supreme soul, the super soul of all living entities, you are beginningless, endless, and omniscient, beyond the limits of time and space. Purport. The Vedic ritualistic ceremonies, the knowledge thereof, and the person who agrees to perform them are inspired by the Supreme Soul. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Matak Smritir Jnanam Aponam Cha. From the Lord come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. The Super Soul is situated in everyone's heart. Sarvasicham Ridi Sanivishta, Ishvara Sarvabhutanam Ride Sherjuna Tishtati. And when one is advanced in Vedic knowledge, the Super Soul gives him directions. Acting as Super Soul, the Lord gives inspiration to a suitable person to perform the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. In this connection, 4 classes of priests known as Ritvik are required. They are mentioned as Hota, Advaryu, Brahma, and Utkata. 31. O my Lord, your Lordship is eternally awake, seeing everything that happens. As eternal time, you reduce the duration of life for all living entities. through your different parts, such as moments, seconds, minutes, and hours. Nonetheless, you're unchanged, resting in one place as the Supersoul, Witness, and Supreme Lord, the birthless, all-pervading controller who is the cause of life for all living entities. Purport. In this verse, the word kutastha is very important. Although the Supreme Personality of Godhead is situated everywhere, he is the central, unchanging point. Ishvara sarvabhutanam riteshe arjuna tishtati. The Lord is situated in full in the core of everyone's heart, as indicated in the Upanishads by the word ekatvam. Although there are millions and millions of living entities, the Lord is situated as the Supersoul in every one of them. Nonetheless, he is one in many, as stated in Brahma Samhita. Advaitam achyutam anadim anantarupam. He has many forms, yet they are Advaita, one and unchanging, since the Lord is all-pervading. He is also situated in eternal time. The living entities are described as parts and parcels of the Lord because he is the life and soul of every living entity, of all living entities, being situated within their hearts as the Antaryami, as enunciated by the philosophy of inconceivable oneness and difference, Achintya Bheda Bheda. Since the living entities are part of God, they are one in quality with the Lord, yet they are different from him. The Supersoul who inspires all living entities to act is one and changeless. There are varieties of subjects, objects, and activities, yet the Lord is one. 32. There's nothing separate from you, whether it be better or lower, stationary or moving. The knowledge derived from the Vedic literatures like the Upanishads or from the sublims of the original Vedic knowledge form your external body. You are Hiranyagarbha, the reservoir of the universe, but nonetheless being situated as a supreme controller, you're transcendental to the material world, which consists of the three modes of material nature. Fourth, the word param means the supreme cause, and aparam means the effect. The supreme cause is the supreme personality of Godhead, and the effect is material nature. The living entities, both moving and non-moving, are controlled by the Vedic instructions in art and science, and therefore they are all expansions of the external energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the center as a Supersoul. The Brahmandas, the universes, exist during the duration of a breath of the Supreme Lord. Yashyaika nishvasita kalamatavalamvya jivanti loma vilaja jagadandanatha. Thus, they are also within the womb of the Supreme Personality Godhead, Mahavishnu. Nothing, therefore, is separate from the Supreme Lord. This is the philosophy of Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva. 33. O my Lord, being changelessly situated in your own abode, you expand your universal form within this cosmic manifestation. Thus, appearing to taste the material world, you are Brahman, the Supersoul, the oldest, the personality of Godhead. Purport. It is said that the Absolute Truth appears in three features, namely impersonal Brahman, localized Supersoul, and ultimately the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. The cosmic manifestation is the gross material body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who enjoys the taste of the material mellows by expanding his parts and parcels, the living entities, who are qualitatively one with him. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, however, is situated in the Vaikuntha planets, where he enjoys the spiritual mellows. Therefore, the one absolute truth, Bhagavan, pervades all by his material cosmic manifestation, the spiritual Brahman effulgence, and his personal existence as the Supreme Lord. 34. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme, who in his unlimited, unmanifested form has expanded the cosmic manifestation, the form of the totality of the universe. He possesses external and internal energies and the mixed energy called the marginal potency, which consists of all the living entities. Fourth, the Lord is endowed with unlimited potencies, parasya shakti vidaya shruyate, which are summarized as three, namely external, internal, and marginal. The external potency manifests this material world, the internal potency manifests the spiritual world, and the marginal potency manifests the living entities, who are mixtures of internal and external. The living entity, being part and parcel of Parabrahman, is actually internal potency. But because of being in contact with the material energy, he is an emanation of material and spiritual energies. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is above the material energy and is engaged in spiritual pastimes. The material energy is only an external manifestation of his pastimes. 35. O my Lord, O best of the givers of benediction, if you will kindly grant me the benediction I desire, please let me not meet death from any of the living entities created by you. Report. After being created from the navel of Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, Lord Brahma, the originally created living being within the universe, created many other different types of living entities to reside in this universe. Therefore, from the beginning of creation, the living entities were born of a superior living entity. Ultimately, Krishna is the supreme living being, the father of all others. Aham bija pratak pita. He is the seed-giving father of all living entities. Thus far, Hiranyakashipu has adored Lord Brahma as the Supreme Personality of Godhead and has expected to become immortal by the benediction of Lord Brahma. Now, however, having come to understand that even Lord Brahma is not immortal, because at the end of the millennium, Lord Brahma will also die, Hiranyakashipu is very carefully asking him for benedictions that will be almost as good as immortality. His first proposal is that he not be killed by any of the different forms of living entities created by Lord Brahma within this material world. 36. Grant me that I not die within any residence or outside any residence, during the daytime or at night, nor on the ground or in the sky. Grant me that my death not be brought by any being other than those created by you, nor by any weapon, nor by any human being or animal. Report. Hiranyakashipu was very much afraid of Vishnu's becoming an animal to kill him, because his brother had been killed by Vishnu when the Lord took the shape of a boar. He is therefore very careful to guard against all kinds of animals. But even without taking the shape of an animal, Vishnu could kill him by hurling his Sudarshana chakra, which can go anywhere without the Lord's physical presence. Therefore, Hiranyakashipu was careful to guard against all kinds of weapons. He guarded against all kinds of time, space, and countries because he was afraid of being killed by someone else in another land. There are many other planets, higher and lower, and therefore he prayed for the benediction of not being killed by any resident of any of these planets. There are three original deities, Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshwar. Hiranyakashipu knew that Brahma would not kill him, but he also wanted not to be killed by Lord Vishnu or Lord Shiva. Consequently, he prayed for such a benediction. Thus, Hiranyakashipu thought himself securely protected from any kind of death caused by any living entity within this universe. He also carefully guarded against natural death, which might take place within his house or outside of the house. 37, 38. Grant me that I not meet death from any entity, living or non-living. Grant me further that I not be killed by any demigod or demon, or by any great snake from the lower planets. Since no one can kill you in the battlefield, you have no competitor. Therefore, grant me the benediction that I too may have no rival. Give me sole lordship over the living entities and presiding deities, and give me all the glories obtained by that position. Furthermore, give me all the mystic powers attained by long austerities and the practice of yoga, for these cannot be lost at any time. Report. Lord Brahma obtained his supreme position due to long austerities and penance, mystic yoga, meditation, and so on. Hiranyakashipu wanted a similar position. The ordinary powers achieved by mystic yoga, austerities, and other processes are sometimes vanquished, but the powers obtained by the mercy of the Lord are never vanquished. Hiranyakashipu therefore wanted the benediction that would never be vanquished. Thus end the Bhaktivinoda purports of the 7th canto, 3rd chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Hiranyakashipu's plan to become immortal. Chapter 4, Hiranyakashipu terrorizes the universe. Text 1. Narad Muni continued, Lord Brahma was very much satisfied by Hiranyakashipu's austerities, which were difficult to perform. Therefore, when solicited for benedictions, he indeed granted them, although they were rarely to be achieved. Lord Brahma said, O Hiranyakashipu, these benedictions for which you have asked are difficult to obtain for most men. Nonetheless, O my son, I shall grant you them, although they are generally not available. Purport. Material benedictions are not always exactly worthy of being called benedictions. If one possesses more and more, a benediction itself may become a curse, For just as achieving material opulence in this material world requires great strength and endeavor, maintaining it also requires great endeavor. Lord Brahma informed Hiranyakashipu that although he was ready to offer him whatever he had asked, the result of the benedictions would be very difficult for Hiranyakashipu to maintain. Nonetheless, since Brahma had promised, he wanted to grant all the benedictions asked. The word durlabhan indicates that one should not take benedictions one cannot enjoy peacefully. 3. When Lord Brahma, who awards infallible benedictions, departed, being worshipped by the best of the demons, Hiranyakashipu, and being praised by great sages and saintly persons. The demon Hiranyakashipu, having thus been blessed by Lord Brahma and having acquired a lustrous golden body, continued to remember the death of his brother and therefore be envious of Lord Vishnu. Purport. A demoniac person, in spite of acquiring all the opulences possible to obtain in this universe, continues to be envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. 5 through 7. Hiranyakashipu became the conqueror of the entire universe. Indeed, the great demon conquered all the planets in the 3 worlds, upper, middle, and lower, including the planets of the human beings, the Gandharvas, the Garudas, the great serpents, the Siddhas, Charnas, and Vidyadharas, the great saints, Yamaraj, the Manus, the Yakshas, the Rakshasas, the Pishachas, and their masters, and the masters of the ghosts and bhutas. He defeated the rulers of all the other planets where there are living entities and brought them under his control. Conquering the abodes of all, he seized their power and influence. Purport. The word Garuda in this verse indicates that they're planets of great birds, like Garuda. Similarly, the word Uraga indicates that they're planets of enormous serpents. Such a description of the various planets of the universe may challenge modern scientists who think that all planets but this Earth are vacant. These scientists claim to have launched excursions to the moon where they have found no living entities, but only big craters full of dust and stone, although in fact the moon is so brilliant that it acts like the sun in illuminating the entire universe. Of course, it is not possible to convince modern scientists of the Vedic information about the universe. Nonetheless, we're not very much impressed by the words of scientists who say that all other planets are vacant and that only the Earth is full of living entities. 8. Hiranyakashipu, who possessed all opulence, began residing in heaven with its famous Nandana garden, which is enjoyed by the demigods. In fact, he resided in the most opulent palace of Indra, the king of heaven. The palace had been directly constructed by the demigod architect Vishwakarma and was as beautifully made as if the goddess of fortune of the entire universe resided there. Purport. From this description, it appears that all the heavenly planets of the upper planetary system are thousands upon thousands of times more opulent than the lower planetary system in which we live. Vishwakarma, the famous heavenly architect, is known as the constructor of many wonderful buildings in the upper planets, where there are not only beautiful buildings, but also many opulent gardens and parks, which are described as Nandana Devodyan, gardens quite fit to be enjoyed by the demigods. This description of the upper planetary system and its opulences is to be understood from authoritative scriptures like the Vedic literatures. Telescopes and the other imperfect instruments of scientists are inadequate for evaluating the upper planetary system, although such instruments are needed because the vision of the so-called scientists is imperfect. The instruments themselves are also imperfect. Therefore, the upper planets cannot be appraised by imperfect men using imperfect man-made instruments. Direct information received from the Vedic literature, however, is perfect. We therefore cannot accept the statement that there are no opulent residences on planets other than this Earth. 9 through 12. The steps of King Indra's residence were made of coral. The floor was bedecked with invaluable emeralds. The walls were made of crystals and the columns of Vaidurya stone. The wonderful canopies were beautifully decorated. The seats were bedecked with rubies, and the silk bedding, as white as foam, was decorated with pearls. The ladies of the palace, who were blessed with beautiful teeth and the most wonderfully beautiful faces, walked here and there in the palace, their ankle bells tinkling melodiously, and saw their own bodily reflections in the gems. The demigods, however, being very much oppressed, had to bow down and offer obeisances at the feet of Hiranyakasipu, who chastised the demigods very severely and for no reason. Thus Hiranyakasipu lived in the palace and severely ruled everyone. Fourth, Hiranyakasipu was so powerful in the heavenly planets that all the demigods except Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and Lord Vishnu were forced to engage in his service. Indeed, they were afraid of being severely punished if they disobeyed him. Srila Vishnu Chakravarti has compared Hiranyakasipu to Maharaj Vena, who was also atheistic and scornful of the ritualistic ceremonies mentioned in the Vedas. Yet Maharaj Vena was afraid of some of the great sages, such as Bhrigu, whereas Hiranyakasipu ruled in such a way that everyone feared him, but Lord Vishnu, Lord Brahma, and Lord Shiva. Hiranyakasipu was so alert against being burned to ashes by the anger of great sages like Bhrigu, that by dint of austerity he surpassed their power and placed even them under his subordination. It appears that even in the higher planetary systems, to which people are promoted by pious activities, disturbances are created by asuras like Hiranyakasipu. No one in the three worlds can live in peace and prosperity without disturbance. That should put you at peace. Oh, my dear king, Hiranyakasipu was always drunk on strong-smelling wines and liquors, and therefore his coppery eyes were always rolling. Nonetheless, because he had powerfully executed great austerities in mystic yoga, although he was abominable, all but the three principal demigods, Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and Lord Vishnu, personally worshipped him to please him by bringing him various presentations with their own hands. Purport. In the Skanda Purana, there is this description: Upayanam dadu sarve vinadevan hiranyaka. Hiranyakashipu was so powerful that everyone but the three principal demigods, namely Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and Lord Vishnu, engaged in his service. Madhavacharya says, Aditya Vasavo Rudras Trividahi Surayataha. There are three kinds of demigods, the Adityas, the Vasus, and the Rudras. Beneath whom are the other demigods, like the Maruts and the Sadyas. Marutas Chaiva Vishve Cha, Sadyas Chaiva Chatatkataha. Therefore, all the demigods are called Tripishtapa. And the same word Tri applies to Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and Lord Vishnu. 14. O Maharaj Yudhisthira, descendant of Pandu, by dint of his personal power, Hiranyakashipu, being situated on the throne of Indra, controlled the inhabitants of all the other planets. The two Gandharvas, Visvavasu and Tumburu, I myself and the Vidyadharas, Apsaras, and sages all offer prayers to him again and again, just to glorify him. Report.
Prabhu, who's speaking?
Who is speaking?
Yeah. When it says, O Maharaj Yudhisthira, descendant of Pandu.
Who is telling
Sorry.
the story? To Maharaj Yudhisthira. Well,
Is it
Narad Muni.
Narad Muni?
Narad Muni.
Okay, thank you.
Narad Muni is telling Yudhisthira. O Maharaj Yudhisthira, descendant of Pandu, by dint of his personal power, Hiranyakashipu, being situated on the throne of King Indra, controlled the inhabitants of all the other planets. The two Gandharvas, Vishwavasu and Tumburu, I myself and the Vidyadharas, Apsaras, and sages all offer prayers to him again and again, just to glorify him. Purport. The Asuras sometimes become so powerful that they can engage even Narad Muni and similar devotees in their service. This doesn't mean that Narad was subordinate to Hiranyakasipu. Sometimes, however, it so happens in this mature world that great personalities, even great devotees, can also be controlled by the Asuras. 15. Being worshipped by sacrifices offered with great gifts by those who strictly followed the principles of Varna and Ashram. Hiranyakasipu, instead of offering shares of the oblations to the demigods, accepted them himself. As if in fear of Hiranyakasipu, the planet Earth, which consists of 7 islands, delivers food grains without being plowed. Thus it resembled cows like the Surabhi of the spiritual world, or the Kamaduga of heaven. The earth yielded sufficient food grains. The cows supplied abundant milk, and outer space was beautifully decorated with wonderful phenomena. By the flowing of their waves, the various oceans of the universe, along with their tributaries, the rivers, which are compared to their wives, supplied various kinds of gems and jewels for Hiranyakashipu's use. These oceans were the oceans of salt water, sugarcane, wine, clarified butter, milk, yogurt, and sweet water. Purport. The water of the seas and oceans of this planet, of which we have experience, are salty. But other planets within the universe contain oceans of sugarcane juice, liquor, ghee, milk, and sweet water. The rivers are figuratively described as wives of the oceans and seas because they glide down to the oceans and seas as tributaries, like the wives attached to their husbands. Modern scientists attempt excursions to other planets, but they have no information of how many different types of oceans and seas there are in the universe. According to their experience, the moon is full of dust, but this doesn't explain how it gives us soothing rays from a distance of millions of miles. As far as we are concerned, we follow the authority of Vyasadeva and Shukadeva Goswami, who have described the universal situation according to the Vedic literature. These authorities differ from modern scientists who conclude from their imperfect sensual experience that only this planet is inhabited by living beings, whereas the other planets are all vacant or full of dust. 18. The valleys between the mountains became fields of pleasure for Hiranyakasipu, by whose influence all the trees and plants produce fruits and flowers profusely in all seasons. The qualities of pouring water, drying and burning, which are all qualities of the three departmental heads of the universe, namely Indra, Vayu, and Agni, were all directed by Hiranyakashipu alone, without assistance from the demigods. Purport. It is said in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, Tejavarim Ridam Yata Vinimaya. This material world is conducted by fire, water, and earth, which combine and take shape. Here it is mentioned that the three modes of nature, Prita Gunan, act under the direction of different demigods. For example, King Indra is in charge of pouring water. The demigod Vayu controls the air and dries up the water, whereas the demigod controlling fire burns everything. Hiranyakasipu, however, by dint of his austere performance of mystic yoga, became so powerful that he alone took charge of everything without assistance from the demigods. 19. In spite of achieving the power to control in all directions and in spite of enjoying all types of dear sense gratification as much as possible, Hiranyakashipu was dissatisfied because instead of controlling his senses, he remained their servant. Purport. This is an example of asuric life. Atheists can advance materially and create an extremely comfortable situation for the senses. But because they're controlled by the senses, they cannot be satisfied. This is the effect of modern civilization. Materialists are very much advanced in enjoying money and women. Yet dissatisfaction prevails within human society because human society cannot be happy and peaceful without Krishna consciousness. As far as material sense gratification is concerned, materialists may go on increasing their enjoyment as far as they can imagine. But because people in such a material condition are servants of their senses, they cannot be satisfied. Hiranyakasipu was a vivid example of this dissatisfied state of humanity. 20. Hiranyakashipu thus passed a long time being very much proud of his opulences and transgressing the laws and regulations mentioned in the authoritative Shastras. He was therefore subjected to a curse by the four Kumars, who were great Brahmins. Purport. There have been many instances in which demons, after achieving material opulences, have become extremely proud. So much so that they have transgressed the laws and regulations given in the authoritative Shastras. Hiranyakashipu acted in this way, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 16:23. Yakshastra vidimutsrijya vartate kamakarata nasasiddhim avapnoti na sukham na paramgatim. He who discards scriptural injunctions and acts according to his own whims attains neither perfection nor happiness, nor the supreme destination. The word Shastra refers to that which controls our activities. We cannot violate or transgress the laws and regulative principles mentioned in the Shastras. Bhagavad Gita repeatedly confirms this. Tasmat shastram pramanam te karya karya vyavastito gyatva shastra vidanoktam karma kartum iharhasi. One should understand what is duty and what is not duty by the regulations of the scriptures. Knowing such rules and regulations, one should act so that he may gradually be elevated. Gita 16:24. One should act according to the directions of the Shastra. But the material energy is so powerful that as soon as one becomes materially opulent, he begins to transgress the Shastric laws. As soon as one transgresses the laws of Shastra, he immediately enters upon the path of destruction. 21. Everyone, including the rulers of the various planets, was extremely distressed because of the severe punishment inflicted upon them by Hiranyakasipu. Fearful and disturbed, unable to find any other shelter, they at last surrendered to the Supreme Personality Godhead Vishnu. Purport. Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 5:29, Bhoktaram yagatapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suridam sarvabhutanam gyatvamam shantiricchati. The sages, knowing me as the ultimate purpose of all sacrifice and austerities, the supreme Lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attain peace from the pangs of material miseries. The Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna is actually the best friend of everyone. In a condition of distress or misery, one wants to seek shelter of a well-wishing friend. The well-wishing friend of the perfect order is Lord Sri Krishna. Therefore, all the inhabitants of the various planets, being unable to find any other shelter, were obliged to seek shelter at the lotus feet of the Supreme Friend. If from the very beginning we seek shelter of the Supreme Friend, there will be no cause of danger. It is said that if a dog is swimming in the water and one wants to cross the ocean by catching hold of the dog's tail, certainly he is foolish. Similarly, if in distress one seeks shelter of a demigod, he is foolish, for his efforts will be fruitless. In all circumstances, one should seek shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then there will be no danger under any circumstances. 22 to 23. Let us offer respectful obeisances unto that direction where the Supreme Personality of Godhead is situated, where those purified souls in the renounced order of life, the great saintly persons, go, and from which having gone, they never return. Without sleep, fully controlling their minds and living on only their breath, the predominating deities of the various planets began worshipping Rishikesha with this meditation. Purport. The two words, tasyai kashtayai, are very significant. Everywhere, in every direction, in every heart, and in every atom, the Supreme Personality Godhead is situated in his features as Brahman and Paramatma. Then what is the purpose of saying tasyai kashtayai in that direction where Hari is situated? During Hiranyakasipu's time, his influence was everywhere, but he could not force his influence into the places where the Supreme Personality of Godhead has his pastimes. For example, on this earth, there are such places as Vrindavan and Ayodhya, which are called Dhamas. In the Dham, there is no influence from Kali Yuga or any demon. If one takes shelter of such a Dham, worship of the Lord becomes very easy, and resultant spiritual advancement quickly takes place. In fact, in India, one may still go to Vrindavan and similar places to achieve the results of spiritual activities quickly. 24. Then there appeared before them a transcendental sound vibration emanating from a personality not visible to material eyes. The voice was as grave as the sound of a cloud, and it was very encouraging, driving away all fear. 25, 26. The voice of the Lord vibrated as follows. O best of learned persons, do not fear. I wish all good fortune to you. Become my devotees by hearing and chanting about me and offering me prayers, for these are certainly meant to award benedictions to all living entities. I know all about the activities of Hiranyakashipu and shall surely stop them very soon. Please wait patiently until that time. Purport. Sometimes people are very much eager to see God. In considering the word madharshanam, seeing me, which is mentioned in this verse, one should note that in Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, Bhaktyamam abhijanati. In other words, the ability to understand the Supreme Personality Godhead or to see him or talk with him depends on one's advancement in devotional service, which is called bhakti. In bhakti, there are 9 different activities: Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Parasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmani, Vedanam. Because all these devotional activities are absolute, there is no fundamental difference between worshiping the deity in the temple, seeing him, and chanting his glories. Indeed, all of these are ways of seeing him. For everything done in devotional service is a means of direct contact with the Lord. The vibration of the Lord's voice appeared in the presence of all the devotees. And although the person vibrating the sound was unseen to them, they were meeting or seeing the Lord because they were offering prayers and because the vibration of the Lord was present. Contrary to the laws of the mature world, there's no difference between seeing the Lord, offering prayers, and hearing the transcendental vibration. Pure devotees, therefore, are fully satisfied by glorifying the Lord. Such glorification is called kirtan. Performing kirtan and hearing the vibration of the sound Hare Krishna is actually seeing the Supreme Personality Godhead directly. One must realize this position, and then one will be able to understand the absolute nature of the Lord's activities. When one is envious, 27, when one is envious of the demigods who represent the Supreme Personality Godhead of the Vedas, which give all knowledge of the cows, Brahmins, Vaishnavas, and religious principles, and ultimately of me, the Supreme Personality Godhead, he and his civilization will be vanquished without delay. 28. Hiranyakashipu teases the great devotee Prahlad, his own son, who is peaceful and sober, and who has no enemy. I shall kill Hiranyakashipu immediately, despite the benedictions of Brahma. Report. Of all sinful activities, an offense to a pure devotee or Vaishnava is the most severe. An offense at the lotus feet of a Vaishnava is so disastrous that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has compared it to a mad elephant that enters a garden and causes great havoc by uprooting many plants and trees. If one is an offender at the lotus feet of a Brahmin or Vaishnava, his offenses uproot all his auspicious activities. One should therefore very carefully guard against committing Vaishnava parad or offenses at the lotus feet of a Vaishnava. Here the Lord clearly says that although Hiranyakashipu had received benedictions from Lord Brahma, these benedictions will be null and void as soon as he committed an offense at the lotus feet of Prahlad Maharaj, his own son. A Vaishnava like Prahlad Maharaj is described herein as Nirvaira, having no enemies. Elsewhere in Srimad Bhagavatam 3:25-21, it is said, Ajata Shatrava Shanta Sadhavak Sadhu Bhushanaha. A devotee has no enemies. He is peaceful. He abides by the scriptures, and all his characteristics are sublime. A devotee does not create enmity with anyone, but if someone becomes his enemy, that person will be vanquished by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, despite whatever benedictions he may have received from other sources. Hiranyakashipu was certainly enjoying the fruitful results of his austerities. But here the Lord says that as soon as he committed an offense at the lotus feet of Prahlad Maharaj, he would be ruined. One's longevity, opulence, beauty, education, and whatever else one may possess as a result of pious activities cannot protect one if one commits an offense at the lotus feet of a Vaishnava. Despite whatever one possesses, if one offends the lotus feet of a Vaishnava, he will be vanquished. 29. The great Saint Narad Muni continued, when the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the spiritual master of everyone, thus reassured all the demigods living in the heavenly planets, they offered their respectful obeisances unto him and returned confident that the demon Hiranyakashipu was now practically dead. Report. The less intelligent men who are always busy worshiping the demigods should note that when the demigods are harassed by the demons, they approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead for relief. Since the demigods resort to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, why should the worshippers of the demigods not approach the Supreme Lord for whatever benefits they desire? Srimad Bhagavatam 2.3.10 says, Akama sarva kamo va moksha kama udaradi divrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. Whether one desires everything or nothing, or whether he desires to merge into the existence of the Lord, he is intelligent only if he worships Lord Krishna, Supreme Personality Godhead, by rendering transcendental loving service. Whether one is a karmi, jnani, or yogi, if one wants a particular benediction fulfilled, even if it be material, one should approach the Supreme Lord and pray to him, for then it will be fulfilled. There is no need to approach any demigod separately for the fulfillment of any desire. 30. Hiranyakasipu had 4 wonderful, well-qualified sons, of whom the one named Prahlad was the best. Indeed, Prahlad was a reservoir of all transcendental qualities, because he was an unalloyed devotee of the personality of Godhead. Purport. Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavati akinchana sarvair gunaistatra samasate suraha. If one has unflinching devotional faith in Krishna, all the good qualities of Krishna and the demigods are consistently manifest. Bhagavatam 5:18-12. Prahlad Maharaj is praised herein for having all good qualities because of worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, a pure devotee who has no motives has all good qualities, material and spiritual. If one is spiritually advanced, being a staunch, liberal devotee of the Lord, all good qualities are manifest in his body. On the other hand, harava bhaktasya kuto mahat gunaha, if one is not a devotee, even if he has some material good qualities, they have no value. That is the verdict of the Vedas. 31-32. By the way, liberal here doesn't mean that he's relaxed and casual in following his duties and the rules and regulation. Liberal means he's very generous and magnanimous. He's very kind in sharing Krishna consciousness. That means liberal.
Thank you.
31-32. The qualities of Maharaj Prahlad, the son of Hiranyakashipu, are described herewith. He was completely cultured as a qualified Brahmin, having very good character and being determined to understand the absolute truth. He had full control of his senses and mind. Like the Supersoul, he was kind to every living entity and was the best friend of everyone. To respectable persons, he acted exactly like a menial servant. To the poor, he was like a father. To his equals, he was attached like a sympathetic brother. And he considered his teachers, spiritual masters, and all the God brothers to be as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He was completely free from unnatural pride that might have arisen from his good education, riches, beauty, aristocracy, and so on. Report. These are some of the qualifications of a Vaishnava. A Vaishnava is automatically a Brahmin because a Vaishnava has all the good qualities of a Brahmin. Shamodamastapa shaucham kshantirarchavameva cha jnanam vijnanam astikyam brahmakarma svabhavajam. Peacefulness, self-control, austerity, purity, tolerance, honesty, wisdom, knowledge, and religiousness. These are the qualities by which the Brahmins work. Bhagavad Gita 18:42. These qualities are manifest in the body of a Vaishnava. Therefore, a perfect Vaishnava is also a perfect Brahmin, as indicated here by the words Brahmanya Shila Sampanna. A Vaishnava is always determined to understand the absolute truth. And to understand the absolute truth, one needs to have full control over his senses and mind. Prahlad Maharaj possessed all these qualities. A Vaishnava is always a well-wisher to everyone. The 6 Goswamis, for example, are described in this way. Dhira dhira jana priyau. They were popular with both the gentle and the ruffians. A Vaishnava must be equal to everyone, regardless of one's position. Atmavat. A Vaishnava should be like Paramatma. Ishvara sarvabhutanam ritesh arjuna tishtati. Paramatma does not hate anyone. Indeed, he's in the heart of a Brahmin, but he's also in the heart of a pig. As the moon never refuses to distribute its pleasing rays, even to the home of a Chandala, a Vaishnava never refuses to act for everyone's welfare. Therefore, a Vaishnava is always obedient to the spiritual master, Arya. The word Arya refers to one who is advanced in knowledge. One who is deficient in knowledge cannot be called Arya. At the present, however, the word Arya is used to refer to those who are godless. This is the unfortunate situation of Kali Yuga. The word Guru refers to the spiritual master who initiates his disciple into advancement in the science of Krishna or Krishna consciousness. As stated by Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, Shri Bhagavan Mantro Padeshake Gurav Iti Artada. Text 33. Although Prahlad Maharaj was born in a family of Asuras, he himself was not an Asura, but a great devotee of Lord Vishnu. Unlike the other Asuras, he was never envious of Vaishnavas. He was not agitated when put into danger, and he was neither directly nor indirectly interested in the fruit of activities described in the Vedas. Indeed, he considered everything material to be useless, and therefore he was completely devoid of material desires. He always controlled his senses and life air, and being of steady intelligence and determination, he subdued all lusty desires. Purport. From this verse, we discover that a man is not qualified or disqualified simply by birth. Prahlad Maharaj was an asura by birth, yet he possessed all the qualities of a perfect Brahmin. Brahmanya Shila Sampanna. Anyone can become a fully qualified Brahmin under the direction of a spiritual master. Prahlad Maharaj provided a vivid example of how to think of the spiritual master and accept his directions calmly. 34. O King, Prahlad Maharaj's good qualities are still glorified by learned saints and Vaishnavas. As all good qualities are always found existing in the Supreme Personality Godhead, they also exist forever in his devotee Prahlad Maharaj. Purport. From authoritative scripture, it is learned that Prahlad Maharaj still lives in Vaikuntha Loka, as well as within this material world on a planet Sutala. This transcendental quality of existing simultaneously in different places is another qualification of the Supreme Personality Godhead. Goloka eva nivasati akilatma bhuta. The Lord appears in the core of everyone's heart, yet he exists on his own planet, Goloka, Vrindavan. A devotee acquires qualities amongst almost the same as those of the Lord because of unalloyed devotional service. Ordinary living beings cannot be so qualified, but a devotee can be qualified like the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not in full, but partially. 35. In any assembly where there are discourses about saints and devotees, O King Yudhisthira, even the enemies of the demons, namely the demigods, what to speak of you, would cite Prahlad Maharaj as an example of a great devotee. Who could list the innumerable transcendental qualities of Prahlad Maharaj? He had unflinching faith in Vasudeva, Lord Krishna, the son of Vasudeva, and unalloyed devotion to him. His attachment to Lord Krishna was natural because of his previous devotional service. Although his good qualities cannot be enumerated, they prove that he was a great soul, Mahatma. Report. In his prayer to the 10 incarnations, Jayadev Goswami says, Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa, Jaya Jagadisha Hare. Prahlad Maharaj was devotee of Lord Nrsimha, who is Keshava, Krishna himself. Therefore, when this verse says, Vasudeva Bhagavati, one should understand that Prahlad Maharaj's attachment for Nrsimhadev was attachment for Krishna, Vasudeva, the son of Vasudeva. Prahlad Maharaj, therefore, is described as a great Mahatma, as the Lord himself confirms in Bhagavad Gita 7:19. Paunam janmanam mante gyanavan mam prapadyate Vasudeva sarvamiti sa Mahatma sudurlabha. After many births and deaths, he whose actually knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. A great devotee of Krishna, the son of Vasudeva, is a great soul, very rarely to be found. Prahlad Maharaj's attachment for Krishna will be explained in the next verse. Krishna graha grihitatma. Prahlad Maharaj's heart was always filled with thoughts of Krishna. Therefore, Prahlad Maharaj is the ideal devotee in Krishna consciousness. 37. From the very beginning of his childhood, Prahlad Maharaj was uninterested in childish playthings. Indeed, he gave them up altogether and remained silent and dull, being fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness. Since his mind was always affected by Krishna consciousness, he could not understand how the world goes on, being fully absorbed in the activities of sense gratification. Report. Prahlad Maharaj is the vivid example of a great person fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 8:274, it is said, Stavarajangama deke na deke taramurti sarvatra hoya nija istadeva spurti. A fully Krishna conscious person, although situated in this mature world, does not see anything but Krishna, anywhere and everywhere. This is the sign of a Mahabhagavat. The Mahabhagavat sees Krishna everywhere because of his attitude of pure love for Krishna. As confirmed in Brahma Samhita 5:38, Premanjanat Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santak Sadaiva Hridayeshu Vilokayanti Yam Shyama Sundaram Achintya Gunat Swarupam Govindamari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. I worship the primeval Lord Govinda, who is always seen by the devotee, whose eyes are anointed with the pulp of love. He is seen in his eternal form of Shyama Sundar, situated in the heart of the devotee. An exalted devotee or Mahatma, who is rarely to be seen, remains fully conscious of Krishna and constantly sees the Lord in the core of his heart. It is sometimes said that when one is influenced by evil stars like Saturn, Rahu, or Ketu, he cannot make advancement in any prospective activity. In just the opposite way, Prahlad Maharaj was influenced by Krishna, the supreme planet, and thus he could not think of the material world and live without Krishna consciousness. That is the sign of a Mahabhagavat. Even if one is an enemy of Krishna, a Mahabhagavat sees him to be engaged in Krishna's service. Another crude example is that everything appears yellow to the jaundiced eye. Similarly to Mahabhagavat, everyone but himself appears to be engaged in Krishna's service. Prahlad Maharaj is the approved Mahabhagavat, the supreme devotee. In the previous verse, it was stated that he had natural attachment, naisargiki rati. The symptom of such natural attachment for Krishna are described in this verse. Although Prahlad Maharaj was only a boy, he had no interest in playing, stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 11.242. Viraktiranyatra cha. The symptom of perfect Krishna consciousness is that one loses interest in all material activities. For a small boy to give up playing is impossible. But Prahlad Maharaj, being situated in first-class devotional service, was always absorbed in trance of Krishna consciousness. Just as a materialistic person is always absorbed in thoughts of material gain, a Mahabhagavat, like Prahlad Maharaj, is always absorbed in thoughts of Krishna. 38. Prahlad Maharaj was always absorbed in thought of Krishna. Thus, being always embraced by the Lord, he didn't know how his bodily necessities, such as sitting, walking, eating, lying down, drinking, and talking, were being automatically performed. A small child, while being cared for by his mother, doesn't know how the needs of the body for eating, sleeping, lying down, passing water, and evacuating are being fulfilled. He's simply satisfied to be in the lap of his mother. Similarly, Prahlad Maharaj was exactly like a small child being cared for by Govinda. The necessary activities of his body were performed without his knowledge. As a father and mother care for their child, Govinda cared for Prahlad Maharaj, who remained always absorbed in thoughts of Govinda. This is Krishna consciousness. Prahlad Maharaj is the vivid example of perfection in Krishna consciousness. 39. Because of advancement in Krishna consciousness, he sometimes cried, sometimes laughed, sometimes expressed jubilation, and sometimes sang loudly. This verse further clarifies that the comparison of a devotee to a child. If a mother leaves her small child in his bed or cradle and goes away to attend to some family duties, the child immediately understands that his mother has gone away and therefore he cries. But as soon as the mother returns and cares for the child laughs and becomes jubilant. Similarly, Prahlad Maharaj, being always absorbed in thoughts of Krishna, sometimes felt separation, thinking, where is Krishna? This is explained by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Shunyaitam jagat sarvam govinda virahena me. When an exalted devotee feels that Krishna is invisible, having gone away, he cries in separation. And sometimes when he sees that Krishna has returned to care for him, he laughs, just as a child sometimes laughs upon understanding that his mother is taking care of him. These symptoms are called bhava. In the Nectar of Devotion, various bhavas, ecstatic conditions of a devotee, are fully described. These bhavas are visible in the activities of a perfect devotee. 40. Sometimes upon seeing the Supreme Personality Godhead, Prahlad Maharaj would loudly call in full anxiety. He sometimes lost his shyness in jubilation and began dancing in ecstasy. And sometimes, being fully absorbed in thoughts of Krishna, he felt oneness and imitated the pastimes of the Lord. Prahlad Maharaj sometimes felt that the Lord was very far away from him and therefore called him loudly. When he saw that the Lord was before him, he was very jubilant. Sometimes, thinking himself one with the Supreme, he imitated the Lord's pastimes. And in separation from the Lord, he would sometimes show symptoms of madness. These feelings of a devotee would not be appreciated by impersonalists. One must go further and further into spiritual understanding. The first realization is impersonal Brahman, but one must go still further to realize Paramatma, and eventually the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is worshipped by the transcendental feelings of a devotee in a relationship of Shanta, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, or Madhurya. Here the feelings of Prahlad Maharaj were in the mellow of Vatsalya, filial love and affection. As a child cries when left by his mother, when Prahlad Maharaj felt that the Lord was away from him, he began to cry, Nadati. Again, a devotee like Prahlad sometimes sees that the Lord is coming from a long distance to pacify him, like a mother responding to a child saying, "My dear child, do not cry, I'm coming." Then the devotee, without being ashamed due to his surrounding and circumstances, begins to dance, thinking, "Here is my Lord is coming." Thus the devotee, in full ecstasy, sometimes imitates the pastimes of the Lord, just as the cowboys used to imitate the behavior of the jungle animals. However, he does not actually become the Lord. Prahlad Maharaj achieved the spiritual ecstasies described herein by his advancement in spiritual understanding. 41. Sometimes feeling the touch of the Lord's lotus hand, he became spiritually jubilant and remained silent, his hair standing on end and tears gliding down from his half-closed eyes because of his love for the Lord. When a devotee feels separation from the Lord, he becomes eager to see where the Lord is. And sometimes when he feels pangs of separation, tears flow incessantly from his half-closed eyes. As stated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his Shikshastika, Yugaitam nimeshena chakshusha pravishaitam. The words chakshusha pravishaitam refer to tears falling incessantly from the devotee's eyes. These symptoms, which appear in pure devotional ecstasy, were visible in the body of Prahlad Maharaj. 42. Because of his association with perfect unalloyed devotees who had nothing to do with anything material, Prahlad Maharaj constantly engaged in the service of the Lord's lotus feet. By seeing his bodily features when he was in perfect ecstasy, persons very poor in spiritual understanding became purified. In other words, Prahlad Maharaj bestowed upon them transcendental bliss. Report. Apparently, Prahlad Maharaj was placed in circumstances in which he was always tortured by his father. In such material conditions, one cannot have an undisturbed mind. But since bhakti is unconditional, ahaitukiya pritiyata, Prahlad Maharaj was never disturbed by the chastisements of Hiranyakasipu. On the contrary, the bodily symptoms of his ecstatic love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead turned the minds of his friends, who had also been born in ecstatic families. Instead of being disturbed by the torments of his father, Prahlad influenced these friends and cleansed their minds. The devotee is never contaminated by material conditions, but persons subjected to material conditions can become spiritually advanced and blissful upon seeing the behavior of a pure devotee. 43. My dear King Yudhishthira, the demon Hiranyakasipu tormented this exalted, fortunate devotee, although Prahlad was his own son. Purport. When a demon like Hiranyakasipu, despite his elevated position due to severe austerities, begins to tease a devotee, he begins falling down, and the results of his austerities dwindle. One who oppresses a pure devotee loses all the results of his austerities, penances, and pious activities. Since Hiranyakasipu was now inclined to chastise his most exalted devotee son, Prahlad Maharaj, his opulences began dwindling. 44. Maharaj Yudhishthira said, O best of the saints among the demigods, O best of spiritual leaders, how did Hiranyakasipu give so much trouble to Prahlad Maharaj, the pure and exalted saint? Although Prahlad was his own son, I wish to know about this subject from you. Report. To know about the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the characteristics of his pure devotee, one must inquire from authorities like Devarshi Narad. One cannot inquire about transcendental subject matters from a layman. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 3.25.25, Satam prasangam mama virya samvido bhavanti ritkaranarasayana katha. Only by association with devotees can one authoritatively understand the position of the Lord and his devotees. A devotee like Narad Muni is addressed as Subrata. Su means good, and Brata means vow. Thus the word Subrata refers to a person who has nothing to do with material world, which is always bad. One cannot understand anything spiritual from a materialistic scholar puffed up with academic knowledge. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 1855, Bhaktimama Vijanati, one must try to understand Krishna by devotional service and from a devotee. Therefore, Yudhishthira Maharaj was quite right in wanting to learn further about Prahlad Maharaj from Sri Narad Muni. 45. A father and mother are always affectionate to their children. When the children are disobedient, the parents chastise them, not due to enmity, but only for the child's instruction and welfare. How did Hiranyakasipu, the father of Prahlad Maharaj, chastise such a noble son? This is what I'm eager to know. Maharaj Yudhishthira further inquired, how was it possible for a father to be so violent toward an exalted son who was obedient, well-behaved, and respectful to his father? O Brahman, O Master, I have never heard of such a contradiction, as an affectionate father is punishing his noble son with the intention of killing him. Kindly dissipate our doubts in this regard. Report. In the history of human society, an affectionate father is rarely found to chastise a noble and devoted son. Therefore, Maharaj Yudhishthira wanted Narada Muni to dissipate his doubt. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 7th canto, 4th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Hiranyakashipu Terrorizes the Universe. Chapter 5, Prahlad Maharaj, the saintly son of Hiranyakashipu. Text 1. The great saint Narada Muni said, the demons headed by Hiranyakashipu accepted Shukracharya as their priest for ritualistic ceremonies. So this is the story of Prahlad's birth. The demons headed by Hiranyakashipu accepted Shukracharya as their priest for ritualistic ceremonies. Shukracharya's 2 sons, Sanda and Amarka, lived near Hiranyakashipu's palace. Report. The beginning of the life story of Prahlad is recounted as follows. Shukracharya became the priest of the atheists, especially Hiranyakashipu, and thus his 2 sons, Sanda and Amarka, resided near Hiranyakashipu's residence. Shukracharya should not have become the priest of Hiranyakashipu because Hiranyakashipu and his followers were all atheists. A Brahmin should become the priest of a person interested in the advancement of spiritual culture. The very name Shukracharya, however, indicates a person interested in obtaining benefits for his sons and descendants, regardless of how the money comes. A real Brahmin would not become a priest for atheistic men. 2. Prahlad Maharaj was already educated in devotional life, but when his father sent him to those 2 sons of Shukracharya to be educated, they accepted him at their school along with the other sons of the Asuras. Prahlad certainly heard and recited the topics of politics and economics taught by the teachers, but he understood that political philosophy involves considering someone a friend and someone else an enemy, and thus he did not like it. Report. Politics involves accepting one group of men as enemies and another group as friends. Everything in politics is based on this philosophy. An entire world, especially at the present, is engrossed in it. The public is concerned with friendly countries and friendly groups, or enemy countries and enemy groups. But as stated in Bhagavad Gita, a learned person does not make distinctions between enemies and friends. Devotees especially do not create friends and enemies. The devotee sees that every living being is part and parcel of Krishna. Mamaivangsho jiva bhuta. When a devotee treats friends and enemies equally by trying to educate them both in Krishna consciousness. Of course, atheistic men do not follow the instructions of pure devotees, but instead consider a devotee their enemy. The devotee, however, never creates a situation of friendship and enmity. Although Prahlad Maharaj was obliged to hear the instructions of Sandanamarka, he did not like the philosophy of friends and enemies, which forms the basis of politics. He was not interested in this philosophy. Four, my dear King Yudhishthira, once upon a time, the king of the demons, Hiranyakasipu, took his son Prahlad on his lap and very affectionately inquired, "My dear son, please let me know what you think is the best of all subjects you have studied from your teachers." Purport. Hiranyakashipu did not ask his young son anything that would be very difficult for him to answer. Instead, he gave the boy a chance to speak plainly about whatever he thought might be best. Prahlad Maharaj, of course, being a perfect devotee, knew everything and could say what the best part of life is. In the Vedas, it is said, Yasmin vigyate sarvam evam vigyatam bhavati. If one properly understands God, he can understand any subject matter very nicely. Sometimes we have to challenge big scientists and philosophers, but by the grace of Krishna, we emerge successful. It is impossible, practically speaking, for ordinary men to challenge scientists or philosophers concerning genuine knowledge. But a devotee can challenge them because the best of everything is known to a devotee by the grace of Krishna. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 10:11, Tesham evanukam partam ham agyanajam tamaha nashayami atmabhavasto jnanadipena pashvata. Krishna, who is situated in the core of everyone's heart as a super soul, dissipates all the ignorance from the heart of a devotee. As a special favor, he enlightens the devotee with all knowledge by putting before him the torch of light. Prahlad Maharaj therefore gave him that knowledge. Prahlad Maharaj was able to solve the most difficult parts of problems because of his advanced Krishna consciousness. Therefore, he replied as follows. And here it comes. Sri Prahlado Vacha Tatsadu Manye Suravarya Dehinam Sada Samudvigna Dhyama Satkraha Hitvatma Patam Griyamanda Kupam Vanam Gatoya Dharimashrayeta. Prahlad Maharaj replied, O best of the Asuras, king of the demons, as far as I have learned from my spiritual master, any person who has accepted a temporary body and temporary household life is certainly embarrassed by anxiety because of having fallen in a dark well where there is no water but only suffering. One should give up this position and go to the forest, Vana. More clearly, one should go to Vrindavan, where only Krishna consciousness is prevalent, and should thus take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. Hiranyakashipu thought that Prahlad, being nothing but a small boy with no actual experience, might reply with something pleasing, but nothing practical. Prahlad Maharaj, however, being an exalted devotee, had acquired all the qualities of education. Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavati akinchana sarvaya gunaistotra samasate suraha harava bhaktasya kuto mahat guna manoratena satidhavato vahi. One who has unflinching devotional faith in Krishna consistently manifests all the good qualities of Krishna and the demigods. However, he who has no devotion to the Supreme Personality of Godhead has no good qualifications because he's engaged by mental concoction in material existence, which is the external feature of the Lord. Bhagavatam 5:18-12. So-called educated philosophers and scientists who are simply on the mental platform cannot distinguish between what is actually sat, eternal, and what is asat, temporary. The Vedic injunction is asato ma jyotirgama. Everyone should give up the platform of temporary existence and approach the eternal platform. The soul is eternal, and topics concerning the eternal soul are actually knowledge. Elsewhere it is said, apashyatam atmatattvam griheshu griyamedinam. Those who are attached to the bodily conception of life and who thus stick to life as a grihasta or householder on the platform of material sense enjoyment cannot see the welfare of the eternal soul. Prahlad Maharaj confirms this by saying that if one wants success in life, he should immediately understand from the right sources what his self-interest is and how he should mold his life in spiritual consciousness. One should understand himself to be part and parcel of Krishna and thus completely take shelter of his lotus feet for guaranteed spiritual success. Everyone in the material world is in the bodily conception, struggling hard for existence, life after life. Prahlad Maharaj therefore recommended that to stop this material condition of repeated birth and death, one should go to the forest, Vana. In the Varnashram system, one first becomes a brahmachari, then a grihastha, vanaprastha, and finally a sannyasi. Going to the forest means accepting vanaprastha life, which is between grihastha life and sannyas. As confirmed in Vishnu Purana 389, Varnashrama charavata purushena parakpuman Vishnur aradhyate. By accepting the institution of Varna and Ashram, one can very easily elevate himself to the platform of worshipping Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Otherwise, if one remains in the bodily conception, one must rot within this mature world, and his life will be a failure. Society must have divisions of Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra, and for spiritual advancement, one must gradually develop as a brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, and sannyasi. Prahlad Maharaj recommended that his father accept vanaprastha life, because as a grihastha, he was becoming increasingly demoniac due to bodily attachment. Prahlad recommended to his father that accepting vanaprastha life would be better than going deeper and deeper into griyamanda kupam, the blind well of life as a grihastha. In our Krishna conscious movement, we therefore invite all the elderly persons of the world to come to Vrindavan and stay there in retired life, making advancement in spiritual consciousness, Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna. So we're going to go for darshan.
Sure.
Jai Prabhupada.
Jai Prabhupada.
Jai Shri Radhamara Mohan ki jai.
Jai.
Shri Mahaprabhu ki jai.
Jai Shri Namam Shri Baraya Krishna Prastaya Mutare Shmati Vida Sankalpa Marte Krishna Shakti Shri Bhakti Paranema. Jai 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 Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Jai Radha Madam Mohan.
Jai Nrsimhadeva.
Jai Lakshmi Nrsimhadeva. Shri Ranganath, Sri Deva, Bhagavatam, Dasa, Jai. Jai Mahaprabhu. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thanks Prabhu.
Thank you all.
Hare Krishna.
Vanchakalpatarubhyascha, Kripasanebhascha, Patitanam, Bhavane Vaishnava. Thank you, Shraddha. Thank you,
Thank
Prabhu.
you everybody for joining on the call. Thank you, Navneet Prabhu, for the wonderful rendition. Hare Krishna. So we are going to switch off the call now and we'll meet again next time that Gandharvika Mataji.
Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Gandharvika.